Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to change your future, the first decision you must make is this. Stop believing that your education ended the day you walked out of a classroom. Too many people spend years in school, earn a certificate, receive a diploma, and then quietly close the book on learning. They assume someone else is responsible for teaching them everything they need to know. But the truth is, the most valuable education you will ever receive is the education you choose for yourself. That's where real growth begins. That's where lives begin to change. You see, every one of us starts with different circumstances. Some are born into opportunity, while others have to fight for every inch of progress. Some attend great schools, while others never get that chance. But eventually, those differences matter less than one important question. What are you doing today to improve your own mind? Because there comes a point in every person's life when excuses lose their power and responsibility takes over. The day you accept complete responsibility for your own education is the day you stop being limited by your past. Think about it. The world has never offered more opportunities to learn than it does right now. There are books filled with the wisdom of people who spent decades mastering their craft. There are lectures, interviews, documentaries, courses, conversations, and experiences waiting for anyone willing to seek them. Knowledge is no longer locked behind expensive institutions. It is available to those who are hungry enough to pursue it. The real question isn't whether knowledge exists. The real question is whether you have the discipline to go after it. Most people wait for someone to motivate them. They wait for a teacher, a boss, a parent, or a mentor to point them in the right direction. But successful people understand something different. They become their own teacher. They wake up asking, what can I learn today that will make tomorrow better? That simple question, repeated day after day, creates extraordinary results over time. Now, don't misunderstand this. Self-education doesn't mean you know everything. In fact, it's the opposite. It begins with humility. It begins by admitting there is so much you don't know. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. The moment you think you've learned enough is the moment you stop growing. The greatest learners remain students throughout their entire lives. They never lose the excitement of discovering something new. Here's another truth worth remembering. Your income rarely exceeds your level of personal development for very long. Your opportunities expand as your knowledge expands. Your confidence grows as your understanding grows. The person you become determines the results you achieve. That's why investing in your mind always produces the highest return. Money can disappear. Circumstances can change overnight. But what you learn, what you understand, and the skills you develop become part of who you are. No one can take that away from you. Imagine treating your mind the same way an athlete treats their body. An athlete doesn't exercise once and expect lifelong strength. They train consistently. They improve little by little. They understand that progress comes from repetition. Your mind deserves the same commitment. Feed it something valuable every day. Read a few pages. Listen carefully to people who have achieved what you hope to achieve. Reflect on your experiences. Ask better questions. Keep stretching your thinking. Small daily investments eventually create remarkable wisdom. Many people spend hours scrolling through information that entertains them, but never transforms them. They know the latest gossip, the newest trends, and every distraction imaginable, yet they struggle to build the life they truly want. Be careful what occupies your attention, because your attention shapes your future. Every hour you spend learning something valuable becomes another brick in the foundation of the person you're becoming. And don't wait until everything is perfect before you begin. Don't tell yourself you'll start reading when life slows down, or you'll learn new skills after you get promoted, or you'll focus on personal growth once you have more money. Those moments rarely arrive on their own. Growth begins exactly where you are, with whatever resources you have today. One book can change your thinking. One lesson can change your habits. One idea can completely redirect your future. The beautiful part about taking responsibility for your own education is that it puts the steering wheel back into your hands. You're no longer trapped by your circumstances or defined by your past. Every day becomes another opportunity to become a little wiser, a little stronger, and a little more capable than you were yesterday. That's how remarkable lives are built, not through one dramatic breakthrough, but through thousands of quiet decisions to keep learning when nobody is watching. So make a commitment today. Become the kind of person who never stops investing in the greatest asset you will ever own, your own mind. Because when you take responsibility for your education, you also take responsibility for your destiny. Asterisk. Your future begins the moment you become your own greatest teacher. Now, once you've accepted responsibility for your own education, the next step is learning how to keep that education alive every single day. And that begins with something more valuable than talent, more powerful than intelligence, and more important than having the perfect opportunity. It begins with curiosity. Curiosity is the engine that drives every great learner. It is the quiet voice inside you that refuses to settle for simple answers. It asks, why does this work? How can this be improved? What am I missing? Those questions may seem small, but they have the power to change the direction of your life. The quality of your life is often determined by the quality of the questions you ask. Think about children for a moment. They are naturally curious. They want to know why the sky is blue, why birds can fly, why people behave the way they do. They explore without fear of looking foolish. Somewhere along the way, many adults lose that curiosity. We become comfortable with what we already know. We stop asking questions because we don't want to appear uninformed. But here's the irony. The people who ask the most questions are often the ones who become the most knowledgeable. Never confuse knowing a few facts with truly understanding something. Information is everywhere, but understanding is rare. A curious mind doesn't collect facts like souvenirs. It connects ideas. It searches for meaning. It looks beneath the surface. Anyone can memorize a quote, but a curious person asks how that quote applies to everyday life. Anyone can read a chapter, but a curious learner wonders how to put those lessons into action before the day is over. The remarkable thing about curiosity is that it turns ordinary moments into opportunities for growth. Every conversation becomes a classroom. Every challenge becomes a lesson. Every mistake becomes valuable feedback. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You begin asking, what is this trying to teach me? That single shift changes frustration into education. You'll notice that the most successful people are excellent observers. They pay attention. They study people who are producing results. They don't copy blindly, but they ask themselves, what habits make this person effective? What principles are they following? What can I learn from their experience? Success leaves clues, but only curious people notice them. And don't limit your curiosity to subjects directly connected to your career. Learn about history, psychology, communication, leadership, health, finance, philosophy, and human behavior. The more areas of knowledge you explore, the more connections your mind begins to make. Sometimes the solution to a business problem comes from a lesson learned in nature. Sometimes the answer to a relationship challenge comes from understanding psychology. Knowledge is never wasted. One lesson often unlocks another in ways you never expected. Here's something else worth remembering. Curiosity requires humility. The moment you believe you already know enough, your growth begins to slow. Pride closes doors that curiosity would gladly open. There is wisdom in saying, I don't know, but I'm willing to find out. Those 6 words have built businesses, transformed careers, strengthened relationships, and changed countless lives. Don't be afraid to challenge your own beliefs either. That's one of the greatest signs of intellectual maturity. Ask yourself from time to time, what if I've been looking at this the wrong way? Growth often begins when you're willing to reconsider what you've always assumed to be true. That doesn't mean changing your beliefs every day. It means having the courage to keep learning instead of protecting your ego. Curiosity also gives you resilience. When life becomes difficult, a curious person doesn't immediately give up. They study the setback. They examine what happened. They look for patterns. They search for solutions instead of someone to blame. Every obstacle becomes a teacher instead of an enemy. That's why 2 people can experience the same failure, yet one walks away defeated while the other walks away wiser. The difference isn't the experience. The difference is the questions they ask afterward. Remember, learning isn't about having all the answers. It's about developing the habit of seeking better ones. Every day offers countless chances to become a little wiser. Read something that stretches your thinking. Listen carefully instead of waiting for your turn to speak. Meet people with different perspectives. Explore ideas that make you think. Let your mind remain flexible, alive, and eager to discover. Over time, this habit becomes part of who you are. You no longer learn because someone tells you to. You learn because you've discovered the joy of growing. You begin to realize that education is not an event, it's a lifestyle. Every sunrise brings another opportunity to understand more than you understood yesterday. And here's the beautiful reward. Curiosity doesn't just fill your mind with knowledge, it fills your life with possibility. The more you ask, the more you discover. The more you discover, the more capable you become. And the more capable you become, the more confidently you can shape your future. So never let your sense of wonder grow old. Protect it, feed it, follow it wherever it leads, because the greatest breakthroughs always begin with one simple question. A curious mind never stops growing, and a growing mind never stops winning. Now, once you've taken responsibility for your own education, and you've developed a genuine curiosity about the world around you, the next question becomes, what are you feeding your mind? because curiosity alone isn't enough. A hungry mind can still be fed poor quality information. Just as your body reflects the food you eat, your mind reflects the ideas you consume. If you consistently feed it wisdom, it grows stronger. If you consistently feed it distraction, it grows weaker. Every single day, whether you realize it or not, you're educating yourself. The only question is whether you're educating yourself intentionally or accidentally. Every book you read, every conversation you have, every video you watch, every podcast you listen to, every article you scroll through, they're all shaping your thinking. They influence your beliefs, your decisions, your habits, and ultimately your future. Here's something worth thinking about. Two people can have the exact same 24 hours, yet 5 years later their lives can look completely different. Why? Because while one person spent those hours consuming information that inspired growth, the other spent them consuming information that merely filled time. One invested in the mind. The other entertained it without developing it. The difference isn't always dramatic in a single day, but over months and years it becomes impossible to ignore. If you want extraordinary results, you must become selective about what you allow into your mind. Not everything deserves your attention. Attention is one of the most valuable resources you possess. Once an hour has passed, you can never get it back. So ask yourself, is what I'm consuming helping me become the person I want to become? That's a powerful filter. It doesn't mean you can never relax or enjoy entertainment. It simply means entertainment should not become your primary education. Successful people have always understood the value of learning from those who came before them. That's why books remain one of the greatest investments you can make. For the price of a meal, you can spend hours learning from someone who devoted decades to mastering a subject. Think about how remarkable that is. You gain access to lessons that took another person 20 or 30 years to discover. That's one of the greatest bargains life offers. But don't just read to finish pages. Read to change your thinking. Keep a notebook nearby. Underline ideas that challenge you. Ask yourself how each lesson applies to your own life. Knowledge becomes valuable only when it moves from the page into your actions. Otherwise, it's just information sitting quietly on a shelf inside your mind. The same principle applies to the people you spend time with. Conversations are a form of education. Every person you meet knows something you don't know. Some teach you through their wisdom. Others teach you through their mistakes. Either way, there's always something to learn if you're paying attention. Spend time with people who encourage you to think bigger, who challenge your excuses, and who inspire you to raise your standards. Those relationships quietly shape your future more than you may realize. Be careful though, because negativity is also contagious. Constant complaining, endless criticism, and conversations that revolve around gossip slowly drain your ambition. You may not notice it after one afternoon, but over time your thinking begins to shrink. Protect your mind from influences that weaken your confidence or lower your expectations. You wouldn't knowingly pour dirty water into a clean glass and expect it to remain pure. Treat your mind with the same care. Another habit that separates lifelong learners is intentional listening. We live in a noisy world where everyone wants to speak, but few people truly listen. Listening is one of the fastest ways to grow because it allows you to borrow someone else's experience. When someone who has achieved success shares a lesson, don't simply hear the words. Listen for the principles behind them. Ask yourself why they believe what they believe. Those insights often become turning points in your own journey. And remember, high-quality knowledge doesn't always come from formal education. Some of life's greatest lessons come through observation, experience, travel, failure, and meaningful conversations. Stay open to learning wherever wisdom appears. Sometimes a simple conversation with an older person contains more practical knowledge than an entire semester of theory. Sometimes a difficult setback teaches more than a year of comfort ever could. Wisdom often arrives wearing ordinary clothes. Make it a habit to feed your mind something valuable every single day. It doesn't have to be hours at a time. Even 20 or 30 focused minutes can begin changing the way you think. Read a chapter from a great book. Listen to an insightful lecture during your commute. Reflect on what you've learned before going to bed. Those small daily deposits into your mind accumulate just like money invested wisely. At first, the progress seems invisible, but eventually the growth becomes undeniable. Never underestimate the compound effect of good ideas. One idea can change a habit. One habit can change your character. Character can change your decisions, and your decisions shape your destiny. That's why guarding your mental diet is one of the most important responsibilities you'll ever accept. As you continue this journey of self-education, you'll begin to notice something remarkable. Your confidence grows, not because you know everything, but because you know you're becoming better equipped to handle whatever life brings your way. You stop fearing challenges because you've trained your mind to keep learning. You stop chasing shortcuts because you've discovered the lasting value of steady personal growth. So choose your influences wisely. Feed your mind with truth, wisdom, and ideas that elevate your thinking, because the quality of what enters your mind today will determine the quality of the life you create tomorrow. Feed your mind with greatness, and greatness will begin to grow within you. Now, after you've taken responsibility for your own education, awakened your curiosity, and filled your mind with valuable knowledge, there's one step that separates those who simply know from those who truly grow. That step is action. Knowledge has incredible potential, but potential alone has never changed a life. Information can inspire you, motivate you, and even impress others, but unless it is put into practice, it remains nothing more than unused possibility. Think about how many people have shelves full of books they've never applied. They attend seminars, watch educational videos, listen to inspiring talks, and take detailed notes. Yet a year later, their lives look almost exactly the same. The problem isn't that they lack information. The problem is that they've mistaken learning for doing. They believe that because they understand an idea, they've already benefited from it. But understanding and applying are two very different things. Imagine someone reading 10 books on physical fitness but never exercising. They could explain nutrition, describe the best workout routines, and quote experts word for word. Yet none of that knowledge would improve their health unless they actually got up and moved. The same principle applies to every area of life. Reading about discipline doesn't make you disciplined. Studying leadership doesn't automatically make you a leader. Learning about success doesn't guarantee success. Your life changes only when your behavior changes. That's why every lesson you learn should immediately lead to one simple question. What can I do with this today? Not next month. Not when conditions are perfect. Today. Even the smallest action is more valuable than the greatest intention left unfinished. Don't underestimate the power of beginning before you feel completely ready. One of the biggest traps people fall into is waiting for certainty. They want to know every answer before taking the first step. They want the perfect plan, the perfect timing, and the perfect opportunity. But life doesn't work that way. Clarity often comes after action, not before it. You discover what works by trying. You improve by adjusting. You grow by moving forward despite uncertainty. And yes, you'll make mistakes. That's part of the process. In fact, mistakes are often the tuition you pay for real education. Every successful person you admire has failed more times than most people are willing to admit. The difference is that they didn't allow failure to become their identity. They treated it as feedback. They asked, what did this experience teach me? Then they made the necessary adjustments and kept going. Don't fear making mistakes. Fear making the same mistake over and over because you're unwilling to learn from it. Experience becomes valuable only when you take time to reflect on it. At the end of each day, ask yourself a few simple questions. What did I learn today? What worked well? What could I improve tomorrow? Those small moments of reflection transform ordinary experiences into lifelong wisdom. Remember, confidence isn't something you're born with. Confidence grows through repeated action. Every promise you keep to yourself strengthens your belief that you can handle bigger challenges. Every small victory prepares you for a larger one. You don't wake up one morning feeling courageous. You become courageous by doing difficult things consistently until they no longer intimidate you. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. Many people become excited for a few days. They read for hours, make ambitious plans, and promise themselves they'll completely transform their lives. But after a week or two, the excitement fades, and so does the effort. Lasting success isn't built on occasional bursts of motivation. It's built on ordinary actions repeated faithfully over time. Think of a craftsman creating something beautiful. He doesn't rush the process. Every careful cut, every measured adjustment, every hour of patient work contributes to the final masterpiece. Your life is no different. Every skill you practice, every habit you strengthen, every lesson you apply is shaping the person you're becoming. You may not notice dramatic progress after a single day, but don't judge the journey too quickly. Great achievements are often the result of thousands of small actions that seemed insignificant at the time. It's also important to remember that action creates momentum. The hardest part is usually taking the first step. Once you begin, the next step becomes easier. Progress has a way of building upon itself. One completed task encourages another. One new habit opens the door to the next. Before long, the person who once struggled to begin becomes someone who naturally follows through. As you continue applying what you learn, you'll notice something remarkable. Knowledge starts turning into wisdom. Wisdom is knowledge tested by experience. It's the difference between reading about success and living successfully. It's the difference between knowing the path and walking it. People will begin to notice the change in you, not because you talk differently, but because you act differently. Your decisions become wiser, your habits become stronger, your character becomes more dependable. Never allow learning to become a substitute for living. The purpose of education is not simply to fill your mind with ideas. The purpose is to transform the way you think, the way you act, and ultimately the way you live. Every lesson is an invitation to become a better version of yourself. Accept that invitation daily. So don't just collect knowledge, put it to work. Let every page you read, every conversation you have, and every lesson you discover become something visible in your actions. Because when knowledge meets consistent action, ordinary people begin achieving extraordinary results. Knowledge opens the door, but action is the step that changes your life. Now, after you've accepted responsibility for your own education, awakened your curiosity, filled your mind with valuable knowledge, and most importantly, begun putting that knowledge into action, there's one final ingredient that determines whether those efforts become a lifelong transformation or just another temporary burst of enthusiasm. That ingredient is consistency. This is where real self-education is either built or abandoned. Because becoming truly knowledgeable isn't about what you do once in a while. It's about what you do over and over again. People often admire those who seem exceptionally intelligent. They call them gifted, brilliant, or even geniuses. But if you look closely, you'll discover that behind their success isn't a single dramatic moment of inspiration. It's thousands of quiet mornings, late nights, repeated efforts, and daily habits that nobody applauded. Great minds are rarely created by extraordinary days. They're created by ordinary days repeated with extraordinary commitment. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing they have to learn everything at once. They overwhelm themselves with books, courses, podcasts, and endless notes. For a few days, they feel unstoppable. Then life gets busy, their energy fades, and the entire routine disappears. Not because they lacked ability, but because they tried to sprint through what was meant to be a lifelong journey. Remember this, learning is not a race. It is a rhythm. Imagine placing one brick on the ground. It doesn't look impressive. Tomorrow you place another, then another. If someone walked by after 3 days, they might laugh and say, "That's not much of a building." But if you continue laying one brick every day without fail, eventually a strong and beautiful structure begins to appear. Success works exactly the same way. Each page you read, each lesson you practice, each thoughtful conversation you have is another brick. Individually they seem small, but together they create a remarkable life. Never underestimate the power of small daily improvements. Becoming just 1% better each day may not seem exciting. You won't wake up tomorrow feeling like a completely different person. But over months and years, those tiny improvements compound into something extraordinary. The person who commits to learning 20 minutes every day will eventually surpass the person who studies intensely only when inspiration strikes. Consistency always outperforms occasional intensity. The challenge, of course, is that consistency isn't glamorous. There are no fireworks. There are no standing ovations for reading another chapter or practicing another skill when nobody is watching. Most of personal growth happens in quiet moments. It happens when you choose the book instead of another distraction. It happens when you review your notes after a long day. It happens when you keep your promise to yourself, even though no one else would know if you skipped it. And that's where character is built. Your habits reveal your priorities far more honestly than your words ever will. Anyone can say they value learning. The real question is whether your daily schedule agrees with your statement. Show me how you spend your evenings. Show me what occupies your attention each morning. Show me what you repeatedly do, and I'll show you the person you're becoming. Don't rely on motivation to carry you. Motivation is wonderful, but it's unpredictable. Some mornings you'll wake up excited to learn. Other mornings you'll feel tired, distracted, or discouraged. If your education depends on how you feel, you'll make very little progress. Discipline is far more dependable than emotion. Discipline says, I made a commitment, and I intend to keep it. That's the voice you must learn to listen to. There will be seasons when progress feels invisible. You'll finish another book and wonder if you're changing at all. You'll practice a skill for weeks without seeing dramatic improvement. During those moments, don't quit. Seeds grow beneath the surface long before anyone sees the harvest. Your mind is developing in ways you cannot always measure. Every lesson is strengthening your thinking. Every repetition is building deeper understanding. Trust the process even when the results haven't yet appeared. Something remarkable happens when learning becomes part of your identity. You stop asking yourself whether you feel like reading today. You simply read because that's who you are. You don't debate whether to improve your skills. Improvement becomes your lifestyle. Self-education is no longer a task on your calendar. It becomes part of your character. Another important lesson is to protect your routine from perfectionism. Many people miss one day and convince themselves they've failed. Then one missed day becomes one missed week, and eventually one missed year. Don't let a small interruption become a permanent excuse. If you stumble, begin again immediately. Progress doesn't require perfection. It requires persistence. Celebrate steady progress instead of dramatic breakthroughs. Every chapter completed, every useful note written, every thoughtful question asked, every lesson applied is evidence that you're becoming stronger than you were yesterday. Those victories deserve your attention because they reinforce the habits that create lasting success. As the years pass, people may look at your confidence, your wisdom, and your ability to solve problems, and they'll assume you were naturally gifted. They won't see the hundreds of mornings you chose learning over comfort. They won't see the evenings you spent improving while others settled for distraction. They won't see the countless small decisions that shaped the person standing before them. But you'll know. And more importantly, the results will know. That's the beauty of consistent self-education. It quietly transforms the way you think, the way you speak, the way you make decisions, and ultimately the way you live. You become someone who isn't easily discouraged because you've trained yourself to keep growing regardless of circumstances. You become someone whose confidence is rooted not in luck, but in preparation. So make learning a daily appointment with your future. Protect it, honor it, repeat it. Because the greatest minds are not built in moments of inspiration. They are built through years of faithful consistency. Asterisk small lessons practiced daily create extraordinary lives over time. As we come to the final part of this journey, I want you to step back and look at everything we've talked about. You accepted responsibility for your own education instead of waiting for someone else to shape your future. You learned to protect your curiosity because great questions lead to great discoveries. You became intentional about what you feed your mind, choosing wisdom over distraction. You committed to putting knowledge into action instead of letting it collect dust in your memory. And finally, you embraced the discipline of learning consistently, day after day, even when no one was watching. Now comes the most important realization of all. Self-education is not something you do for a season. It is not a project you complete or a finish line you eventually cross. It is a way of living. The people who accomplish extraordinary things are not those who stop learning once they reach success. They are the ones who become even more committed to learning after success arrives. There is an interesting trap that catches many people. They reach a certain level of achievement and they begin believing they have arrived. They stop reading as much. They stop asking questions. They stop listening carefully. They begin relying on yesterday's knowledge to solve tomorrow's problems. But the world keeps changing. New ideas emerge, industries evolve, technology advances, human behavior shifts. The person who stops learning eventually finds themselves standing still while the world moves ahead. Growth is one of the few things in life that rewards you every single time you pursue it. Every new skill increases your value. Every new perspective broadens your understanding. Every lesson learned gives you another tool for handling life's opportunities and challenges. You never lose by becoming wiser. You never regret becoming more capable. You never reach a point where personal growth becomes unnecessary. That's why you must begin thinking of yourself as a lifelong student. Not because someone expects it from you, but because you've discovered the joy that comes from constantly becoming more than you were yesterday. There is something deeply satisfying about looking back after a year and realizing that you think differently, communicate more effectively, solve problems more confidently, and approach life with greater wisdom than you once did. Don't compare your journey to someone else's. One person may learn quickly in one area while another progresses steadily in another. That isn't what matters. The only comparison worth making is between the person you were yesterday and the person you're becoming today. If you're growing, you're succeeding. If you're learning, you're moving forward. Progress doesn't always happen at the same speed, but it always rewards those who refuse to stop. As your knowledge grows, something else begins to happen. You become a source of value to other people. The wisdom you've gained through reading, experience, mistakes, and reflection doesn't exist only for your own benefit. It gives you the ability to encourage someone who is struggling, guide someone who feels lost, and inspire someone who has almost given up. One of the greatest rewards of self-education is that your growth eventually becomes a gift to others. Think about the people who have influenced your life. Chances are they didn't impact you simply because they had money or impressive titles. They influenced you because they had wisdom, They understood people. They made thoughtful decisions. They remained calm during difficult moments. They spoke with clarity because they had spent years developing their minds. That's the kind of person you have the opportunity to become. And remember, wisdom is not measured by how much information you can repeat. It's measured by the quality of your decisions. It's reflected in your character, your patience, your humility, and your ability to keep learning even after you've achieved success. The smartest person in the room is often the one who is still willing to say, "There's more for me to learn." Life has a remarkable way of rewarding prepared people. Opportunities often appear without warning. A new career opens. A business idea presents itself. Someone asks you to lead. A difficult challenge suddenly lands in your path. In those moments, you don't rise to the level of your wishes. You rise to the level of your preparation. Every page you've read, every lesson you've practiced, every habit you've developed quietly prepares you for opportunities that haven't even arrived yet. So never think of personal growth as something separate from success. They are inseparable. Success is simply the visible result of invisible growth taking place over time. Before the world sees the achievement, your mind has already been transformed. Before others admire your confidence, you've spent years strengthening your character. Before people notice your wisdom, you've invested countless quiet hours into becoming a better thinker. When you make self-education a permanent part of your life, fear begins to lose its grip on you. You no longer panic when circumstances change because you've trained yourself to adapt. You don't avoid challenges because you've learned how to learn. You don't fear the future because you're continually preparing for it. That's one of the greatest forms of confidence a person can possess. The confidence that no matter what tomorrow brings, you have the ability to grow into whatever it requires. So I want to leave you with this thought. Your greatest investment will never be found in the stock market, a business venture, or a piece of property. Those things may increase in value, but none of them can compare to the investment you make in yourself. Every day you strengthen your mind, you increase the quality of every decision you'll ever make. Every lesson you learn becomes part of the foundation upon which the rest of your life is built. Years from now, people may admire your success, your wisdom, your confidence, and your achievements. What they may never fully see are the thousands of quiet moments when you chose growth over comfort, learning over excuses, discipline over distraction, and purpose over convenience. Those unseen choices are what create an extraordinary life. Never stop asking. Never stop learning. Never stop growing. Because the moment you commit to becoming a lifelong student is the moment you unlock a future with no limits. The greatest masterpiece you will ever create is the person you choose to become.